In this video, we'll be looking at 4 new key vocabulary words that we'll be using throughout this chapter. One of them is the word terms. The second one is the word like terms. The third one is the word coefficients. And the fourth one is the word constants. So to start off, let's define some of these terms. So what I'd like you to do is make sure you have these words and their definitions written down in your notebook so you have them to reference later. A term is each part of an expression that is added together. So what we mean by that is we're looking at each different piece of it being added together. So this is where keep, change, change is going to be your best friend. So write down this example here, and then what I'd like you to do is utilize keep, change, change as you write it. So here we'll use keep, change, change. Here we'll use keep, change, change. And now we have a string of items being added together. Each one of these items being added together is considered a term. So 2x squared is considered a term. Then added together with 4x, considered a term. Added together with -5, that is considered another term. Added together with -7x squared, and added together with 4x. So notice that I am just separating these with commas, and I'm just listing out the items that are being added together. So in this mathematical expression here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different terms being added together. Now beyond this, we have another term that's pretty similar to the word terms, called like terms. And hopefully this is something that you've learned about before. Like terms are terms that have the exact same variable part. So if we look at this example up here, and I'm going to reuse my keep, change, change here. I accidentally erased it. We are looking for identical variable parts. So what I always do is I look at the first term and I look closely at its variable part. So right here I notice that my variable part is this x squared. That's the variable part. So in this statement, if I'm going to find a like term, I'm looking for another term that has an identical variable part. And if I look through, 4x has an x, but it's not identical. It doesn't have the squared. 5 doesn't have any variables on it. But -7x squared also has an x squared on it. So notice here that we have identical variable parts. As a result, 2x squared and -7x squared are considered like terms because they have identical variable parts. Now if we keep going through and we look for more pairs of like terms, here I see a term that has just an x on it. So I'm looking for more terms with just an x, and I see that I have 4x and 4x are also like terms because they have the same variable part. And then from here, this 5, there's -5. There's nothing that goes along with it, so the -5 does not have a like term pair. So here we've identified the words terms and like terms. So now we're going to define these next two terms called constants and coefficients. And to start this off, I'm again going to go and utilize keep, change, change here because I need to be able to accurately identify the signs of those terms. And then I'm going to look at my definition. So the first word we're going to define is this word constants. And a constant is a term that contains a number part, but no variable part. So if we apply this definition to what we see above, to the 5 terms that we see, if I look here, I see that 2x squared has a variable part, and we're looking for no variable part. 4x has a variable part. -5 does not have a variable part, so this is an example of a constant. 7x squared has a variable, as does 4x. So when we're looking for constants, we're looking for terms that do not have a variable part on them. So we found our one constant, which is -5. Now if I look at the next term here, I see the word coefficient. And a coefficient is the number part of a term with a variable. So if I apply that up here, I'm looking for terms that contain variables. So I'm looking at this one, this one, this one, and this one. And a coefficient is saying the number part of a term with a variable. So if I look here at 2x squared, that term has a variable, but I just want the number part. So I'm going to list 2. That's one of my coefficients. Then here I look at the next one that has a variable as well, and I'm looking at just the number part, so 4. Looking at this third circled one that has a variable on it, and its number part is -7. And then on this last one here, again, I have a number part of 4. So we have constants, which are just numbers that contain no variables, and we have coefficients that are the number part of a term that does contain a variable. So now we're going to take those definitions that we've just learned and we're going to apply them to a new expression. So keep those definitions handy because we're going to need them as we identify terms, like terms, coefficients, and constants in this particular statement. So here we're going to start looking at this math expression by utilizing keep, change, change because we know that we need to have terms that are being added. So the first word we need to find is the word terms. And remember, terms are all of the items that are being added in this math expression. So all I'm going to do is go through and find each term that's being added. So here I have 4a, comma, I also have a -5b, don't lose that sign. I then have 3, -2a, 3b, and 7. So those are all of the items being added together. So those all fit the definition of the word term. So now we're going to look for like terms. Remember, like terms are the terms that have identical variable parts. So I'm going to start here by looking at 4a, and what I'm looking for throughout this expression is I'm looking for any other terms that also have a variable part of just an a. And if I look, I notice that -2a has an identical variable part. So here we have like terms of 4a and -2a. Then I'm going to use 2 underlines here. I'm going to look for some b's. So here I have a -5b, and I notice that there's also a 3b. So we have -5b and 3b. And then, believe it or not, having no variable is another type of like term. So having no variable like the 3 and the 7 also makes those like terms. So now we've identified our like terms. Let's move on to coefficients. So remember, by definition, a coefficient is the number part of a term that contains a variable. So let's go through first and find all of the terms that contain variables. And then from here, our coefficients are the number part of those terms. So if we look here at 4a, the number part of that is 4. At -5b, the number part of that is -5. At -2a, the number part of that is -2. And at 3b, the number part of that is 3. Then from here to end, we need to identify any constants that we have. And if we look back at our definition of constants, we know that a constant is a term that has a number but contains no variables. And if I look through here, I notice that I have 2 terms that contain no variables. So as a result, I have 2 constants. I have 3 and 7.